What if the most terrifying villain in your fantasy story isn't even alive? After 2 decades of crafting and dissecting fantasy worlds, I've discovered that the most spine-chilling antagonists often defy our very understanding of existence. In this video, I'll reveal the secrets to creating overwhelming forces that will haunt your readers long after they've closed your book. You'll learn how to tap into primal fears, craft cosmic horrors that make Lovecraft's nightmares seem tame, and weave forces of nature into your narrative that will leave your characters and readers questioning their place in the universe. So let me start by revealing the 5 types of overwhelming forces that will instantly elevate your story and keep it from being lost in a sea of mediocrity. Imagine for a moment that the most terrifying force in your fantasy world isn't a dark lord, a rampaging dragon, or an army of the undead. Instead, it's something far more insidious, something that lurks just beyond the edge of comprehension. Welcome to the realm of cosmic horrors, where the very fabric of reality unravels and sanity is a luxury few can afford. At the heart of this cosmic terror lies the Lovecraftian entity, a being so alien, so utterly incomprehensible that merely glimpsing it can shatter a mortal mind. These aren't your run-of-the-mill monsters. They are primordial forces that existed long before humanity and will continue long after we're gone. But what makes a Lovecraftian horror truly spine-chilling? It's not just their grotesque appearance or immense power. No, it's their complete indifference to humanity. We are less than ants to them, barely worth noticing as they pursue goals beyond our understanding. Take Cthulhu for instance. This cosmic entity doesn't want to conquer the world or amass power. It simply is. Imagine a creature larger than mountains, with a squid-like head, dragon wings, and claws that could crush cities. Now imagine that this creature sees humans as nothing more than specks of dust on a cosmic wind. But here's where it gets really interesting for you as a writer. The true horror of a Lovecraftian entity isn't in its physical form, but in what it represents. It's the embodiment of humanity's deepest fears, our insignificance in the face of the universe, the fragility of our perception of reality, and the limits of our understanding. When you introduce a Lovecraftian horror into your story, you're not just adding a powerful antagonist. You're challenging the very foundations of your characters' worldviews. You're forcing them to confront the terrifying possibility that everything they thought they knew about the universe is wrong. And that, my fellow writer, is where the real magic happens. Because when our characters are faced with the unknowable, when their sanity is pushed to the brink, that's when you can explore the depths of human resilience, the power of hope in the face of despair, and the strength that can be found in human connections. But cosmic horrors are just the tip of the iceberg when it comes to overwhelming antagonists. Let me tell you about the raw, unbridled power of nature itself. Imagine a storm so vast it blots out the sun, or an earthquake that reshapes continents. These aren't just plot devices, they're characters in their own right. A hurricane doesn't need motives or dialogue to be terrifying. Its very existence is a challenge to your heroes, a force that can't be reasoned with or outsmarted, only endured. Think about how a natural disaster could shape your story. A drought that turns lush kingdoms into wastelands, forcing your characters to confront the harsh realities of survival. Or a flood that not only threatens lives but washes away the very foundations of society, leaving your characters to rebuild in its wake. But why stop at disasters? Elemental forces offer another treasure trove of narrative possibilities. Fire, earth, water, air. Each element has its own personality, its own way of interacting with the world. Imagine a sentient wildfire consuming everything in its path, not out of malice, but because that's simply its nature. Or an ancient mountain slowly awakening after eons of slumber, its movement causing catastrophic changes to the landscape. Now let's push the boundaries even further with personification. What if concepts like death, time, or fate weren't just abstract ideas, but actual entities in your world? Personification opens up a whole new realm of storytelling possibilities. Picture death as a character, not necessarily evil, but inevitable and impartial. How would your heroes interact with such a being? Or consider time as an antagonist, a force that's always moving forward, eroding memories, changing landscapes, and bringing the weight of history to bear on your character's choices. Lastly, let's not forget about the classic powerhouses of fantasy, demonic and divine beings. They are the embodiment of cosmic forces, good and evil, order and chaos. A demon in your story shouldn't just be a monster to be slain. It could be a tempter, a corrupter, a being that preys on your character's deepest fears and darkest desires. The key to using any of these overwhelming antagonists effectively is to remember that their power isn't just physical. It's the impact on your world, on your character's psyches, that truly makes them formidable. Now that you've got these earth-shattering forces at your fingertips, you might be wondering, how on earth do I use them without completely overwhelming my story? It's a valid concern. After all, when you're dealing with cosmic horrors and forces of nature, it's easy for your human characters to feel insignificant. But here's a secret that took me years to uncover. These overwhelming antagonists aren't just cool additions to your story. They are the key to unlocking depths in your narrative that you never knew existed. Think about it. When was the last time a fantasy story truly surprised you? Made you question everything you thought you knew about the genre? That's the power these otherworldly villains bring to the table. Imagine a protagonist named Paradan facing off against a traditional dragon. Scary? Sure. But now picture Paradan confronting the Eternal Hunger, an ancient entity older than time itself. This cosmic horror doesn't just threaten a kingdom, it devours entire realities, leaving nothing but void in its wake. Paradan's not just fighting to save his world anymore, he's desperately trying to preserve the very concept of existence itself. And the terrifying part, the Eternal Hunger isn't evil, it simply is, consuming universes with the same indifference we might have while breathing. How does a mere mortal even begin to combat such a force? But it's not just about raising the stakes either. These cosmic forces allow you to explore themes that traditional villains simply cannot touch. When Paradan faces the Eternal Hunger, he's not just fighting for his life. He's grappling with his own insignificance in the grand scheme of things. He's questioning the nature of reality itself. And here's where it gets really interesting. These overwhelming antagonists don't just challenge your characters physically, they force them to grow in ways you might never have imagined. Facing the incomprehensible doesn't just require strength or skill, it demands courage, resilience, and a willingness to adapt to a world that's far stranger and more dangerous than they ever realized. But the true magic happens when you start to see how these otherworldly threats can actually deepen the human elements of your story. When the world is crumbling around them, when reality itself seems to be unraveling, that's when you see what your characters are really made of. That's when bonds are forged, sacrifices are made, and true heroes emerge. Now, if you found anything useful in the video so far, please consider giving it a like to help me grow the channel. Thank you. Okay, you've seen the power of otherworldly villains, but now let's delve into their most potent weapon, the unknown. Have you ever noticed how the monsters you can't quite see in horror movies are always scarier than the ones shown in full light? That's no accident. It's the allure of the incomprehensible, and it's about to become your secret weapon in crafting unforgettable fantasy stories. Think back to your childhood fears. The dark corners of your room, the strange noises in the night. They were terrifying precisely because you couldn't explain them. That same primal fear is what made cosmic horrors, for example, so effective. But it's not just about fear, it's also about awe. Imagine standing at the edge of a vast alien ocean. The water is pitch black and you know there are depths no human has ever explored. What's lurking down there? The possibility is both terrifying and utterly fascinating. That's the dual nature of the incomprehensible. It repels and attracts us in equal measure. But how do you capture this in your writing? Well, it's all about suggestion, about hinting at things too vast or strange for the human mind to fully grasp. Let me show you a technique I call the whisper in the dark. Instead of describing your cosmic horror in detail, focus on its effects, the sudden chill in the air, the way shadows seem to move when no one's looking, the inexplicable dread that settles over a town. These subtle hints can be far more effective than any detailed description. Here's a mini example to illustrate this. An unnatural stillness fell over the kingdom. Karam watched as birds fled en masse from the western sky, their cries of terror carried on an oddly warm wind. In the distance, storm clouds gathered with impossible speed, their colors shifting in ways that made his eyes hurt. The air grew thick with an acrid scent that reminded him of ancient tombs. As the first rumble of thunder reached his ears, Karam couldn't shake the feeling that it sounded almost like words in a language too old for human tongues. Something was coming, something that didn't belong in this world, and Karam knew his kingdom stood directly in its path. Notice how this paragraph never directly describes any cosmic horror? Instead, it focuses on the character's perception and feelings, leaving the reader's imaginations to fill in the terrifying blanks. This technique taps into our deepest, most primal emotions. The fear of the unknown, the awe of the infinite, the unsettling feeling that the world isn't what we thought it was. These are universal human experiences that resonate on a gut level. By mastering the art of the incomprehensible, you're not just creating scary monsters, you're crafting an atmosphere that envelopes your readers, that makes them question reality alongside your characters. You're inviting them to peer into the vast unknown and experience that thrilling mix of terror and wonder for themselves. And here's the real magic. Once you've mastered this technique, you can apply it to any aspect of your fantasy writing, not just villains. Imagine describing magic this way, or ancient ruins, or even the depths of your character's psyches. The allure of the incomprehensible isn't just a tool for creating antagonists. It's a gateway to a whole new level of immersive, thought-provoking fantasy writing. So are you ready to take your cosmic horrors from distant, unfathomable entities to forces that truly shake your characters to their core? Because now it's time to dive into the heart of what makes these overwhelming antagonists so powerful: their connection to human characters. You might be thinking, wait, how can my characters possibly connect to something so vast and incomprehensible? And that's exactly the point. This tension, this impossible bridge between the human and the cosmic, is where the real magic of your story unfolds. Think about it. A distant, uncaring universe is terrifying, sure. But what if your protagonists discovered they were unknowingly part of a cult that worshipped these cosmic entities? Or what if they realized they were a prophesized chosen one, destined to either save the world from these forces or usher in their reign? Suddenly, the cosmic becomes personal. The unfathomable touches the everyday. And your readers, they are hooked. But here's the tricky part. How do you balance your protagonist's agency against these overwhelming cosmic forces? It's a delicate dance, but get it right and your story will resonate on a whole new level. Picture this. Aaron, a young scholar, discovers an ancient text that seems to predict the awakening of a world-ending entity called the Void Weaver. As he delves deeper into the mystery, he realizes he's not just reading prophecies, he's fulfilling them. Every attempt to prevent the catastrophe only brings it closer. Aaron decides to destroy the text, but this act releases sealed energies, accelerating the Void Weaver's awakening. Aaron tries to warn the authorities, but his ravings only attract the attention of a secret cult who believes he's the key to their dark god's return. Yet in the end, it's Aaron's very human choices that ultimately determine the fate of his world. His decision to trust an unlikely ally, his willingness to sacrifice his sanity by delving into forbidden knowledge, and his final choice to offer himself to the Void Weaver in exchange for humanity's survival. These deeply personal human decisions shape the cosmic outcome. In this made-up scenario, Aaron isn't just a passive victim of cosmic forces. His actions matter. His choices have weight. But at the same time, he's caught in the web of something far greater than himself. This tension, this balance between human agency and cosmic inevitability is what will keep your readers on the edge of their seats. The key takeaway here is the interplay between the human and the cosmic. Aaron's story works because it connects the unfathomable, the Void Weaver, with the deeply personal, Aaron's choices and sacrifices. His attempts to fight destiny ironically fulfill it, but his human decisions, born from love, fear, courage, and desperation, ultimately shape how that destiny unfolds. Remember, your human characters are the lens through which your readers experience these vast, incomprehensible forces. By creating relatable characters who are intimately connected to these cosmic powers, whether serving them, opposing them, or caught somewhere in between, you're not just telling a story about big scary monsters. You're exploring what it means to be a human in a universe that's bigger and stranger than we can imagine. And isn't that, after all, the true power of fantasy? To take us on journeys beyond the boundaries of the known, while still touching something deep and true within our very human hearts? Moving on, now that you've crafted your cosmic horrors and connected them to your human characters, you might be wondering, how do I keep this sense of dread and wonder going throughout my entire story? It's a crucial question because maintaining the right atmosphere is what will truly set your cosmic horror apart. Think about the last time you were truly captivated by a story. Chances are, it wasn't just the plot or characters that held you, it was the atmosphere. That intangible feeling that kept you on the edge of your seat, eagerly turning pages. But here's the thing, creating an atmosphere of cosmic dread isn't about constant in-your-face terror. It's about the slow build, the gradual realization that something is fundamentally wrong with the world your characters thought they knew. Let me introduce you to a technique I call the creeping shadow. Instead of revealing your cosmic horror all at once, you let it seep into your story gradually. Start with small, seemingly unconnected details. Maybe the stars seem a little off one night. Perhaps animals start behaving strangely. These little hints create a sense of unease that grows as your story progresses. But here's where many writers stumble. They reveal too much too soon. Remember, in cosmic horror, what you don't show is often more terrifying than what you do. Let's look at how this might work in practice. Imagine your protagonist Callum investigating strange occurrences in his hometown. Instead of immediately confronting him with eldritch abominations, start small. Callum noticed the silence first. The usual chirping of crickets had ceased, leaving an unnatural stillness in the air. As he walked down the familiar street, he couldn't shake the feeling that something was watching him. The shadows seemed deeper, more alive somehow. And was it his imagination, or were the streetlights dimmer than usual, as if struggling against an unseen darkness? See how this builds tension without revealing anything concrete? Your readers, like Callum, will start to feel that something is wrong, even if they can't put the finger on what it is. As your story progresses, you can escalate these hints. Maybe Callum starts having vivid, unsettling dreams. Perhaps he notices townfolks acting oddly, speaking in unfamiliar cadences. Each revelation should raise more questions than it answers, keeping your readers guessing and invested. But maintaining tension isn't just about what you reveal, it's also about pacing. Vary the rhythm of your revelations. After a particularly tense scene, give your readers and characters a moment to breathe. This contrast makes the next unsettling event even more impactful. And here's a pro tip. Use your sentence structure to reinforce the atmosphere. In moments of calm, use longer, flowing sentences. But when tension rises, switch to short, punchy sentences. This subtle change in rhythm can dramatically affect how your readers experience the story. For example, Callum relaxed as he entered his home, the familiar surroundings a welcome respite from the unsettling walk. He sank into his favorite armchair, letting out a long breath he hadn't realized he'd been holding. Then he saw it, a shadow, moving, without a source. His heart pounded as the room suddenly turned cold. The shadow grew, reaching towards him with tendrils of darkness that shouldn't exist. See how the shift in sentence structure mirrors the rising tension? Remember, the goal isn't to exhaust your readers with constant dread. It's about creating a rich, immersive experience that keeps them engaged throughout your story. Cosmic horrors and overwhelming forces in general are powerful tools in your writing arsenal, capable of elevating your fantasy stories to new heights. They challenge your characters in unique ways, explore profound themes, and create an atmosphere of awe and terror that captivates readers. However, they are just one type of antagonist among many. To truly master the art of compelling villains, it's important to have a diverse range of options at your disposal. Check out this video here about creepy villains in fantasy and expand the arsenal of antagonists to choose from to ensure that you don't ruin your story by picking the wrong challenges thrown at your protagonist.